Hey fellow astronauts, it's me, Mario. And today I'm gonna talk about a new game, Shackleton Base. This has been my favorite game from 2024 by far. I played it between I think 20 and 30 times already, and I feel like I'm ready to discuss a bit about its strategy. I think it's a really deep game, interesting, very interactive, and I also think that it shines at 4 players, which is the player count I'm gonna talk about today mainly. What I'm gonna say applies to 3P games too. I don't have much experience with 2P as always, so I won't be talking too much about that. But for 4P and 3P to a certain degree, everything should work out pretty well. I know that the game is not out in the USA yet, or maybe it's coming out these days. I know even in Europe it's not widely available just because it was only the French version was available unless you've been at the Essenspiel. So you might not have much experience with it yet, but I mean, I hope that when you get the game, because I hope you're gonna get it since it's very good, you might find this video interesting. And I might as well put it out now because again, I've been playing it a lot recently and I really wanted to share a few of my thoughts about it. So first off, the game is played on 3 rounds, so I would say that the first tip that I'm gonna give you is that this is not an economy snowballing game. You're not gonna get like income that it's gonna get you better and better as the round progresses because you're not gonna play through many rounds. And if you get income, like iron income for example, is only useful for 2 rounds. You're gonna get it at the end of the first and at the end of the second round. You're gonna get it at the end of the third one, but it doesn't do anything. The same can be said for Raid Earth. Coin income might still be good on the third round just because you might pay maintenance costs, and of course VP income or reputation income, which is actually the same, is still okay, but it's important to think and frame the game so that you understand that it's not all about building up good income and economy. It's This game is all about building up scoring opportunities thanks to the different corporations. And by the way, I plan to make a video for each corporation if players are gonna like this game, and the viewers are gonna tell me that they think it might be interesting to get a video for each of the corporation because they change so much. Of course, the best part about this game is by far that there are 3 different corporations in each and every game, which makes it so that you have 35 wildly different starting setups to deal with, and that's like so good for experienced Euro players that I cannot overstate it. All right, so that's the first thing that I would say. The second big tip is that in general, you're gonna, regarding the 3 different main actions, which are build, buy a card, and take corp actions, you're gonna take the buy a card action every time you can, pretty much. So if you have enough coins and if there's enough energy, you should, in my opinion, pretty much always try to snag up a card. Cards are the big engine in this game, even more than building themselves in some way. And they are both quite expensive. They get more expensive as the game goes, and you cannot rely on energy staying the same way as it is in as it is in your turn. So you should try to seize the opportunity and get a card whenever you can. That said, on the first round, what happens is that most of the time people are gonna fill up the whole row of the build action, just because building early has both the best returns, of course, because again, getting income on the first round is of course better than getting it later. But not only that, you're gonna shape up the board, and the more you build on the first round, the more you will be able to build later on, just because your engine will kick off. If you are behind on buildings, it can work sometimes if you got cards that make up for that, but it's a pretty dangerous situation to be in just because you won't be able to exploit the crater appropriately, because you won't have enough buildings and you will end up paying the other players a lot, so you will give up economy instead of building up economy, and you won't get astronaut back into your board just because you don't have area majorities. So building early is very important. So I would say that on the first round you will just normally the first four actions of the four players are gonna be get a card, build, build. The first two cards will take the threshold down, so that the third player might still get a card, but he will pay one coin more. So it depends a bit on the table, but what I see most of the time is two players go for cards and two players go for buildings. I'll talk more about buildings in detail soon, and I will talk about cards more when I'll be talking about the single corporation, because I think that talking about cards in general is a bit deceiving. Every single corporation have cards that are widely different and that do different stuff within the context of the overall goal of the single corporation. So I won't be dwelling too much on cards right now. Just remember again that you probably should take cards whenever you get the chance. Let's talk a bit about economy in general right now, just so that you have a frame of the values of cards, coins, resources, etc., etc. The most basic conversion is that 1 iron equals to 1 rare earth, which equals to 3 credits. This is something that you can already guess from looking at how to exploit the crater, which equals also to one of the resources of each corporation. That said, normally the blue resources are higher tier than rare earth, which is higher tier than iron, and you can take a look at why here. You will be able to get iron probably early on in your game, but to get the corp resources you have to wait till you get to the upper part of the reputation track. That can be other values that can be discussed, but I think it's a bit too early now. Just remember that also 1 iron, 1 rare earth, 1 blue resource, 3 coins also equal to probably 2 steps on the reputation tracks, which are 2 victory points. So keep that in mind too. This is a bit looser because depending on cards, you might get slightly different kind of conversions, but if we stick to it, you will have a decent understanding of the overall economy. Another general tip that I can share right now is that if you place a yellow astronaut here, you're gonna get a bonus, a red one here a bonus, a blue one here a bonus, but you're not forced to place here the correct colors, and it's not bad if you don't use the right color. Just because to exploit the crater, which is actually incredibly relevant in 4P, a bit less in 3P, in I think a lot less important in 2P, but in 4P it's very important. You get the resources for the kind of astronaut you are gonna use, so you don't get a choice. You cannot use the red to take resources, but you can use the red to build. So let's say you have only one yellow guy, it's probably better to go and build with another color and then get resources to build another time on the first round, for example. So keep in mind that exploiting the craters requires a specific color, while taking an action doesn't. Most of the time you still want to use the correct color for the correct action you're gonna take, but you can also not do that and not feel bad about it. And another small tip is the Lunar Gateway action is the kind of action that in many Euro games is gonna look like a bad action, a bit like probably taking 2 food in Agricola, something like that. In this game it's actually pretty good already on the first round, and it can actually be relevant even on the third one, just because you're gonna get 1 corp action. So it's an overall solid action that plays a big role in the overall economy of the game. So keep in mind that if you feel forced to take it because you don't have coins, or because you need a specific astronaut, or because you need a specific corp action on that turn, don't feel too bad about it. Of course, it's better if you find overall plans that don't involve going to the lunar way too often, but I would say that going there twice in a game is probably very, very much okay. So don't worry too much about it. Another general thing I'm gonna talk about is about the shuttles. Let's take a quick look at them. Um, the thing that I would like to share is that on the first round, normally yellow guys are more important, as you might see. If you take the yellow guys, you're also gonna take the first positions so that you can build a bit more. The red astronauts are the second most important, and the blue ones are actually the worst, but you can make plan depending on the corp that are in the game. You can make plans for the blue men's too, and also being fifth means you're gonna get a lot more resources overall. So it depends. Something to keep in mind, and of course the reverse is true on the third round. On the third round, the yellow ones are the least desirable, uh, wantable, wanted ones probably. While the blue ones are just the best. Keep in mind that in each tier of the shuttles, the number three, so the turn order position that is more likely to be determined by the other players, in that if the other players are gonna pick 1, 2, and 4, you're gonna be third, but if only one player is gonna pick one between 1 and 2, you're gonna be second, for example. So normally there's a lot of uncertainty in picking up 3, but the big advantage is that it's normally the most balanced tile in each tier. Like here you have a lot of coins, 1 iron and 1 earth, and most importantly you have 2, 2, 2. Each one of the number 3 shuttles in the 3 piles has 2, 2, 2, which is probably the most flexible configuration. Of course, again, it's very easy to make work other kind of combinations, but this one is just the most flexible, and it's pretty cool. I would say that there's that for the general stuff. I'm gonna talk a bit more about buildings right now. So it's the start of the game. I've just told you that building is very important right at the start of the game. It's important to get cards, but it's also very important to get buildings. Remember that all players will start with one dome already down around the central crater in many different positions depending on what the players wish to go for. So you're gonna place down the domes, and you're also gonna take the respective blue resource that's already down. At this point, what can you build? So domes are one of the best economical buildings in the game. Each one of them will give you income depending on the guy you're gonna put into it, and again, most of the time it's gonna be yellow or red. In my opinion, coins are generally the most required resource. They are required for cards, for placing guys over here, for maintenance at the end of the round. So normally I like getting some reds over here, but of course yellows can work too. Blue, of course, are a bit of a stinker at the beginning of the game, but as the game proceeds, they become very good, of course. 2 victory points are actually very good. So they're the best at giving you income. They're very good because the third, fourth, and fifth one give you something as an instant bonus, which is very relevant, like both the corp action and the get a card. Remember that you have to fulfill all the conditions for the cards, so you need to pay the coins and you need to have enough energy on the track, are very strong. The problem is that at the start of the game you're gonna have panels down only where there are the starting domes, which means that if you wanna get a dome down, you need to buy your own panel, which is not bad by itself. Of course, you're gonna get steps on the reputation track, but in 4 players, the first panel will just give you 1 step, which makes it a bit less good than, let's say, in 3 players where you're gonna get 2 steps. So uh, in 4 players there is like a cost in trying to place down a dome as your first building. The cool thing is that if you're already paying for a panel, then you can place it wherever you want. We're gonna talk about how to build optimally at the end of this section. Just keep in mind that being able to build everywhere is pretty cool. So, pretty good economical value, just a bit harder to build at the beginning of the game because they basically don't cost you 1 iron, they cost you 1 iron and 1 rare earth. The other thing domes are not good at is, of course, winning majorities. Winning astronauts, it's pretty hard with domes. They are very good at letting you exploit the crater because it doesn't matter the size of the building. It just matters if you have one building in a section to be able to extract anything from it without paying any other player. But they're not good at getting you majorities, and that's because once you have a building in an area, you cannot put more buildings in that same hex. So it means that the other players will have a 2 spots and a 3 spot areas just for them that you cannot use. So you're giving up an area majority when you place down a dome most of the time. Let's talk about workshops instead. Workshops are a bit trickier. So normally the buildings that are easier to place down on the first round for many reasons, but the main one is that you don't need a panel. You don't need another solar panel, you can just place it down where somebody else has got a dome, and since in 4 players there are 3 other players with domes, you have 3 different positions to choose where to place it, which makes it very profitable to place down a workshop right at the start, right on the first round. The tricky, and also they cost 2 iron, which is basically the same as 1 iron and 1 rare earth, which is what a dome costs you, and they are way better, of course, at helping you getting majorities, on top of helping you build a line to exploit the crater on. So, workshops are good on the first round, but normally on the first round I would suggest to go for the first one. That's because it's not easy to use the other ones right on the first round. So these 2 are actually very good on the second round in my opinion, unless you have some card shenanigans for which you can fill them with red astronauts or blue astronauts, or unless you have some convolute sequence because of which you go to the lunar gateway, you get an astronaut in one of the available spots, and remember that when you build a building you can immediately fill it with astronauts if so you want. So it's the only way to move astronauts during a round and not at the end of the round just before income. So, well, not the only way, it's the main way to move astronauts. So this one is actually not relevant until the income phase, which is why it's good if you build it on the first round, because no matter what, if you get a yellow astronaut either from the lunar gateway after you built it or from area majorities and the end of the round, you can fill it with yellow guys and make use of the 3 extra credit in discount that you get from maintenance. You're always gonna use them. I mean, I don't think I've ever saw anybody ending the first round with less than 6 maintenance to pay, so I think it's very easy to use this one. The other 2 are actually stronger in general, because this one makes it so that buying cards is for you way cheaper, not in coins but in energy especially. So it means that if the energy is low, which is quite often the case unless some specific cards are coming out, you can still buy cards while the other can't. And this is very important for your sequencing. It means that you can delay getting cards, even if you could, so that you can take another action first and then go for cards. Timing is of course paramount in this game, so being able to do an action at the proper time is incredible. So this is the main advantage of this one, not just the discount in coins on the card, which is of course very nice, but a discount in the energy requirement. And the last one gets more important as the game goes, because as the game goes, you're gonna be placing astronauts more in the expensive spots. So this one should be saving you more than 3 coins per astronaut in each round, which is what you need to break even or beat the first workshop. So these two are very good on the second round. They might be good on the first round if you have proper plans. This one is already good on the first round, and it's the one that I see people go for most of the time on the first round. Let's quickly talk about labs. Labs are normally for the mid and late game. They can be good on the first round if they can secure something like 2 lines of majorities, so that you can get something like 3 or 4 astronauts. At that point, it totally makes sense to build one. Otherwise, they are pretty expensive. They cost 1 energy, which is not, I mean, it's not a problem because it doesn't have a threshold. So you just need 1 energy, and there's pretty much always 1 energy. Then 3 iron and 1 rare earth, which is very expensive. The cool thing is that you're gonna immediately get back something. I would say that in most games you're gonna end up the game with between 1 and 2 labs, but sometimes even go for 3. It's actually good. You get more reward the more labs you build, but they don't give you anything instantly. They are particularly relevant when there are corps that reward either area majorities, building a lot, or having space for astronauts, which are actually probably half the corps out there. So labs can be good. They're not that good on the first round in most cases, though, of course, because mainly they are gonna represent end of game scoring opportunities. So keep that in mind. And the headquarter, the headquarter. I would suggest that for the first 2 to 3 games, so until you finished the 3 suggested setup, which by the way, I'm a big advocate of. I think it's better if you have a dedicated play group and you think you can play 3 times in a row with them. I would heavily suggest you to go through the 3 different setups. If it's just a group that wants to taste the game and maybe don't touch it for a while, then probably you can go with different corps just so that you can see the overall opportunities that the game opens up to, so that you don't get bored, because the starting setup is a bit boring, but it's very helpful at understanding the basics of the game, in my opinion at least. But I would suggest that for the first 3 games you just forget that you have the headquarter. In 4 players, it's incredibly hard to be able to place down the headquarter already, because you need a hex that's completely free. You need a panel, because you cannot use somebody else's panel unless somebody built one and left it in the middle, which happens sometimes, but it's not something you can count on. And it's incredibly expensive with 4 iron, 1 rare earth, and 2 of these. And what you get out of it is actually normally not amazing. I'm gonna talk a bit more about leaders, which is why I don't think the headquarter is that convenient. But for the first 3 games, I would just say forget about it. It's very expensive, it's difficult to set up, and it's very difficult to get much out of it. What this one is for is to create a good wedge, as we're going to see soon-ish. But it's again, it's pretty hard to use it properly, so I don't think I'm supposed to talk about it much in this like beginner's video today. Alright, I would say that that's pretty much all for the specific buildings, but now I'm gonna talk more about 2 concepts, which are building in lines and building in wedges, which after a few games are the 2 best ways to set up buildings on the board for you. Of course, there are a lot of things that will get into play when thinking where to place a building. Of course, there's a lot of tactics to it, opportunity costs, opportunities opened by your opponents by placing panels in the middle that you can seize and things like that. But just generally speaking, remember that You want to build in a line if you want to exploit the crater, because the lines with 4 hexes are incredibly good already on the first round, of course even better on the second and third round, to be exploited to get a windfall of resources, coins, or well, blue resources, which are actually bonkers. If you can ever get 4 blue resources in a single action, it's crazy good, even in the late game. So keep that in mind. Building in a line is important for that thing. Like, this line is very good for me to exploit the crater. If somebody else builds over here, it's fine. I can pay them 1 or 2 coins and still get 4 things, which is amazing. So building a line has that advantage. What do I mean instead of building in a wedge? If you can put a big building, which in the early game, like the workshop, might be enough, but in the late game, you most of the time want a lab, you can build a wedge. And by building a wedge, I mean something like this. So, a wedge means that you can control with 1 lab 2 different rows. 3 it's very difficult, so that's why I'm talking about a wedge. If you do something like that, which is not, I mean, this is like one of the perfect scenarios, or close to it. So here you can have 2 lines that you can exploit, and you have probably 1 majority on another one of these 2 lines. Probably not on both of them, of course, but you're still threatening to have majority on these 2 lines. It depends on a lot of stuff, on where your opponents are. Like, you can also have a wedge like this, and that can also work pretty well, I would say. Something like that. But the wedge means simply that you put a big structure in a corner, and then you build on 2 lines that start from that corner. Central corners are often pretty good for that, but you can also go for a wedge on the side, of course. It depends a lot on a lot of different factors, on what your opponents are doing, if you have panels available and stuff like that. The center is normally pretty good because it leaves you open to developing your wedge in different directions. But remember that lines are important for exploiting the crater, and wedges are important to both exploit the crater and trying to win majorities. And winning majorities is actually a big point of interaction in 4 players, and the reason why I like 4 players so much. Majorities and exploiting the crater. I think just this game shines at 4 players by far. So these are 2 concepts that I think you have to master by playing the game a lot. A few words. I think we're already running quite long on this video, so I will try to go faster now. The reputation track. I would say 2 things to keep in mind mainly. The first one is that in pretty much all the game you're gonna reach the top by the end of the game. The relevant part though is when you're gonna reach the top. It's very relevant because going fast on the reputation track means that you can unlock additional corp action, which are actually very relevant already in the early mid game. So what matters is how fast you climb this track, not if you go till the top. In my experience, most of the time you're gonna go till the top. And the other important concept to know is that each of these corp actions, you can take it once per turn. So most of the time I would suggest on the first round, if you get a single corp action, like as a bonus by placing a red astronaut here, or as a reward here on the Lunar Gateway, or with other ways, I'd suggest you to take 2 steps on the rep track. It's very important. It's setting you up for good scoring opportunities later on, just by getting you higher and higher on the milestone bonuses. And it's gonna open up new ways to get resources that are very good in a pinch. And it also makes it so that when you take this action, you can actually take 3 full and good actions. If you never jump up on these tracks early on, It means that the first time that you place an astronaut here, already on the first round, you can only take 2 steps here, and then you're forced to take 2 corp actions on the actual corporate boards, which are not often good on the first round. Of course, there are some corp actions that are already good on the first round, but not all of them. So keep in mind that most of the time on the first round, if you take this action with your blue man, which is a very good one, you're also gonna get an astronaut back into your base. If you want to take this one, it's better if you're already like at least on 2, because at that point you can use 1 action to go up here, 1 action to get iron, and 1 action for the corp action, which is already pretty tricky. Again, not all the corps give you something useful on the first round, like space robotics, for example, does, but not all of them. So I would suggest that each time, on your first few games, each time that you get a single corp action in the first round, and sometimes even on the second round, I suggest you to take 2 steps on the rep track. It's just better and easier. It's just a tip that is gonna make your game go smoother on the first or second time. Last, I'm gonna discuss a bit about leaders. Now, leaders, in my opinion, are the weakest part of Shackleton base. Oh, dang. I don't think they are that strong, and I don't think they are that relevant, but mostly I also don't think they are really balanced. I already spoke briefly with the designers about them. Let's see if they're gonna make something about them. The cool thing is that they're really not that relevant. The headquarter by itself is very costly and difficult to manage, and these ones are mainly tied to the headquarter to be very good and easy to use. I won't discuss about them in detail because that would require a lot, but keep in mind that most of the conversion that they ask you to do by paying coins are actually not worth it for at least half of the game, and even in the late-ish game sometimes are not worth it. Like, it's very hard for it to be worth it to convert 3 coins into a resource, for example, like this guy lets you do. So I'm actually even suggesting on the first few games to completely forget about them, and if you build the headquarter, just remember that you get something like a -2 discount on buying cards, and that's it. I would say that that's pretty easy to remember, because these ones can actually be detrimental. So players might start with one of these on their first game and say, hey, I got a cool power, I should use it every time that I can. But if I do that, they will get stuck very soon. Like, converting 3 coins into an iron or a rare earth is actually a conversion that I would not do most of the time in a game, now that I played it quite a lot. So there's that. The easiest one is this one. I think this one works very well already on the first game, so maybe you can just tell everybody to start with this one if you want to. But again, I would suggest you not to use them a lot. The B side has still some problems. The problem of this one is that it's upside down, I don't know why. This one is by far the most powerful one, and some other ones are actually still very, very, very tricky to use. So, leaders, coupled with the difficulty of the headquarters, make it so that I would suggest you to play without them at the start. I can discuss more about them in detail if you want to in later videos, but for now, again, I think that I've already said a lot. I think right now you should have a decent idea of what to go for in the early, mid, and late game, what works well when you're building. You don't know anything about half of the game, but that's because it's truly impossible for me to talk about it without delving a bit deeper into each of the corp, and I strongly feel like each corp deserves a video of its own, just because they are complex enough and they change the incentives not so slightly, so that it's better if you know that if a corp is in the game, you might want to build more or build less or build in a certain way, or try to keep energy high, or try to keep energy low, or try to think that rare earth is really important, or think that iron is really important, and things like that. So I really think that I should discuss about them more in detail in other videos. I would say that that's it for today. I'm sorry if my voice sounded a bit rough. I got a cold in the last few days. All right, so that's it for today. See you next time. Myers out. Bye bye.